Actor, could you lead us in the pledge?
Will be an honor, Mayor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba. Here. Councilman DeWitt.
Here.
Councilman Slack.
Here.
Mayor Simmons.
Here.
Councilman O'Flynn.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Forbes.
Here.
Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to start this meeting with public comment. Members of the public that would like to speak on agenda items, and there's only one today, so if you'd like to speak, please come forward at this time.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Naomi Staley, and I've lived at IBE for about 20, and voted for about 20 years. And I'm very much in support of letting people have the dispensary here. It's much better than taking opiates. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ben Hershenson. I wish I could stay for the whole meeting, but I got another meeting in a few minutes. I just want to say, again, very briefly, pretty much what I said the last week, that I realize there'll be a lot of people addressing the council with a lot of subjective, anecdotal information about the value of medical marijuana. For me, with my background in the pharmaceutical industry and education, I haven't got a position on it yet myself, for whatever that's worth. But this council has always impressed me with a very deliberative and exhaustive study before it ever renders a decision, regardless of what the issue was. And I commend you for that. And sometimes emotional information enters into a decision. But in this particular case, I would hope the council would continue its very deliberative process before they render a decision, and therefore I do support the moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Morning, Shannon.
Morning. Hello, my name is Shannon Livingston. I am a full-time resident of Barefoot Beach, and I'm the founder of the Livingston Foundation for Cannabis Education. I work with all kinds of patients, like John, a senior with Parkinson's, Jimmy, a veteran with PTSD, and Gavin, a 10-year-old with mitochondrial disease, with complications such as early onset Alzheimer's, seizures, and lung and heart damage. I see cannabis helping so many different demographics and diseases, but patients' healing is being delayed and blocked due to dysfunction at a state level and paralysis at a local level. It's important to know that a lot of patient education occurs at the dispensary. Doctors don't have the time, or sometimes the education, to explain in detail things like the endocannabinoid system, cannabinoid ratio, and methods of ingestion. It's overwhelming to new patients. If your doctor told you, with your current level of experience with cannabis, to get a concentrate so you can have capsules and topical with your hybrid vape, would you know what to order for delivery? It's my honor to help educate patients and caregivers, but I am one person, and patients need more support than a recommendation and an invoice. The delivery places an additional financial burden on already exhausted patients, barely able to afford cannabis in the cash-only system of doctors and dispensaries. Delivery is inconsistent, as is supply. If you need and order your medicine on a Tuesday, but delivery isn't available until Saturday, you're doing without your medicine, and there's the possibility it won't be in stock by Saturday when delivery is available. For a patient like 10-year-old Gavin, who is weaned down powerful painkillers like morphine and fentanyl, to be left without pain treatment for days is just cruel. Brick and mortar dispensaries in Bonita Springs would also be a benefit to those requiring delivery for ambulatory reasons, because they would provide closer distribution centers. I've learned a lot from the patients and families I work with, including the importance of having brick and mortar dispensaries for patient access and education. Delaying something as simple as zoning, which other councils have accomplished, keeps patients waiting. Local entities waiting for guidelines from the state. We waited last year, we got none. I think we can expect the same this year. It's just delaying zoning guidelines for dispensaries, which is unfair to patients and unfair to the citizens of Bonita Springs, as denying a constitutional right opens the city up to expensive litigation. Please make the educated decision to provide brick and mortar dispensary zoning and access in a timely manner for the patients, caregivers, and the 71.3% that voted for medical cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak?
Can I set this up in front of you, sir? Up here, if that's all right? Thank you very much. Sorry, I had to bring my own paparazzi with me, guys, because I stand here, sorry, my name is Nick Garrelay. I stand here before you on behalf of 1,358 patients that my company, My Florida Green, has certified for medical marijuana in Naples, Marco Island, and Bonita Springs and Estero. I'm proud and honored to state that I own and have built a state-compliant software that facilitates medical marijuana for both the patient and the physician. And in this software, I have analytical data that I'd like to share with you. Out of those patients in just this area, the average age demographic is 62. 80% of those patients are cannabis naive. 68% of those patients are women. So the most common qualifying condition is PTSD followed by cancer. These are patients that are sick. They live in our prominent area that we all work so hard to keep clean, and they are forced to drive to North Fort Myers or Northport to obtain a medicine that has killed no one ever in history. So, you know, these are tax-paying citizens, and they're forced to either drive or have it delivered. As Shannon stated, a patient that is inexperienced with treating themselves with cannabis, which again I've just pointed out most of them are, now have to become educated on their own or drive all the way to the dispensary in hopes that the dispensary is going to educate them, which they will. You know, the more dispensaries that we have, the more educated people become. So I don't want you all to sit up there and potentially be ignorant and state, well, we're going to wait for the state to release more rules and regulations. As Shannon stated, that's probably not going to happen. What is going to happen, though, is eventually we are going to be recreational. We eventually are going to be adult use in the state of Florida. It might not happen soon, but it will eventually happen. And that's just a whole nother wave of not patients now. These are users. These are recreational users. That's when the stores are going to open up with the pot leaves in the windows, which is what we're all probably trying to prevent. But I think it's really important to point out that right now, the medical marijuana program gives patients that are sick, that have qualifying debilitating conditions, access to a medicine that heals them naturally rather than taking synthetic meds. So, you know, 30 other states have paved the way for us. We're not first. And 71% of the state of Florida voted in favor of it, and 65% in Collier County. So anybody that's kind of opposed to or not into allowing dispensaries to open, I feel would be committing political suicide. So before any of you do that, I would suggest and strongly recommend that you give sick people, sick patients, access to the medicine that they deserve. My name is Nick Garrelay. I own My Florida Green. We're headquartered in Naples on the corner of Radio and Airport Road, and we're happy and honored to serve our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Lisa Colando. 4 years ago, my husband and I left the state of Florida to move to Colorado. He had Crohn's disease, and after 17 surgeries, they told him to put his affairs in order because there was nothing they could do. He was not even 40 years old yet. When Amendment 2 passed, we came back. We owned a former publication here in Southwest Florida, and I was a Collier County English teacher for a number of years. And taking our media publishing background and my education background, we came out with a magazine for Southwest Florida called Revive. This is basically a Cannabis 101 guide. It gives you the education that you need, and it's given people in our area the education that they need. We do a number of events. Cannabis is medicine. Generally, the people coming in are at a minimum of 55 years old and upwards of 80 and 90 years old. These people don't want to get a delivery. They grew up in a time where saved up money to purchase a car or a home. You didn't have credit. You didn't buy online. You didn't have things delivered. They went to a brick and mortar so they could speak face to face with someone who was knowledgeable and educational. They can get information. As Shannon had stated and Nick stated, these people are suffering, and allowing them to have a dispensary nearby will only help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, I had my number one drug this morning, caffeine, so excuse me, but I got the coffee that was straight caffeine and not half and half, so if I go on, forgive me. I never drank coffee before a council meeting. Okay, we just had the Pledge of Allegiance, and it said, "and liberty for all." This is also a liberty question, because those people who have had the freedom to vote for this issue that was important to them, 71.03%, would like to see this accessible to them and have the freedom to be able to go and purchase through the doctor's prescription ordering process if they so need it. PSTD, HIV, cancer, epilepsy. I had 3 siblings die of cancer in the last 5 years. My sister died of pancreatic cancer, my other sister died of lung cancer, and my brother died of multiple myeloma. All 3 of them were able to access medical marijuana. And one of the things that happened is they outlived their the time that they were told they were going to die, because they were able to eat. It increased their appetite. It reduced their pain. They felt that, you know, there was a way that they could still have a lifestyle without taking opioids, because opioids can be very deleterious to your health. So I feel on the health issue that this is, you know, something that's very important. The other thing on the access issue, you know, I was reading this article, and it says that it's about $200 upfront to get a doctor's appointment, so you can get it ordered for you. And then it's another $75 with the state to register to be a registered marijuana medical patient. And then it's $25 for the delivery. I don't know, maybe you can ask the guy who's got all these patients how much it actually costs for the marijuana. I don't know. But this isn't like hippies on the corner smoking pot. You know, this is people who are suffering. And we have a lot of them, okay? And if we can alleviate people's suffering and they can get access and have the liberty to be able to alleviate their pain, I think that's what we say the Pledge of Allegiance for. I think that's what we are compassionate for here in America. Let me also say something about 26 years ago here in Bonita Springs. A friend of mine called me up. He has Bonita Springs Therapeutic Massage. And he said the zoning in Lee County would not allow him to have a massage therapy, a licensed establishment here in Bonita. I said, why? He said, well, you know, they think it's like some kind of, you know what I'm talking about, Audrey, because she worked for the county at that time. And I went up to Brian Kellner in zoning in Lee County and said, we got to work something out here because state law allows this, and you guys are blocking it. Okay, and this is therapeutic for people who have fibromyalgia, people who have sports pain, people who, you know, need a massage. It's not like, you know, massage parlor funky stuff. And we worked it out. And, you know, you haven't seen a proliferation of moral deterioration in this city because there are massage establishments here. This is going to be the same thing with the dispensaries. You will have legal dispensaries that are regulated by the state, as massage therapy is. You might have a problem with one, but you're not going to have a, you know, they get busted, they're controlled, they're kicked out, they're gone, they're fined, they're stripped of their licensing. That's the way that is. And that's with anything. A liquor store sells to under 21-year-old. You know, they get busted, they're gone, goodbye. So it's the same kind of thing. I don't think we should be afraid of that. I think you should be a forward-thinking city and say 71% of the people have voted for this. We're going to stick with the will of the people. That is your charge, to stick with the will of the people. And so I thank you. And Mayor, I want to thank you for letting me go over time. God bless you.
Do you need more time? I guess I know the
That's
answer
wrong.
to that.
That is just wrong. You should never do that with me. No, I'm just going to leave it up to your good judgment. I don't want to hear about process, about how we didn't do this right and we need to do the process right. You have the authority to vote to allow this to go through today. And it's been since November 2016? This is long enough. People are suffering. Come on. Let's alleviate their suffering. And it's an out-of-pocket expense. This is not paid by insurance. So people already have the $275 up front. A $25 delivery charge when you're not getting this covered by insurance is tough for people, especially seniors, which is the majority of people that are using it. So I thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Well, hello there.
Hi,
Dr.
good
Boland,
morning.
Good morning.
My name is Lois Boland. I'm the president of Southwest Florida Veterans Alliance. For the last 9 years, we've been working with Spirit of 45, which I know you guys have participated in that. We started Southwest Florida Veterans Alliance to continue that process, but to also get involved on more state and national things. And a little pause for the cause, on March the 21st is the official Rosie the River Day. And Governor Scott is issuing us a proclamation. I'll be sure you guys get it. They have developed a rose for Rosie the Riveter, and I have a couple I would love to donate to you guys if that's permissible, or you can buy them or whatever the right thing is. I think it's noble that we're starting to really recognize this generation because we're losing them at such a rapid rate. Ironically, we're losing our current veterans at a rapid rate. There's been a 21% increase over 2016 of veterans who have died of opioid overdose. Opioid overdose has killed more Americans than the Iraq, Afghanistan, and Vietnam War. I'm here to say I really want to encourage whatever capacity you have to put this through, because our veterans, we need to get them off opioids. They're more than twice likely than a non-veteran to commit overdose. There's this thing going around on the internet, 22 and 22. You do 22 push-ups in honor of the 22 veterans that are committing suicide a day. And in my heart, with the veterans that I've spoken with and the veterans that we sponsor to get into TM, to get into counseling, to do all of these things, they've told me that this would help them. And I would not have believed it had I not met a young man who was going through cancer. It was osteogenesis sarcoma. It was his last leg, and I was doing some alternative research. His mother had to sneak and buy him marijuana at a time when you had to smoke it because we didn't have this opportunity here. As a nice lady right before said, it's not people smoking dope on the corner, which my beloved veteran husband just assumed it was that because of all the propaganda that's been out there about what marijuana is about. These are, and Jeff Page, who I've been working with, has really brought me up on my education on what these little drops can do, how they can really help a veteran. Ironically, the flamingo is now been proven to be a Florida native bird. It only took them 100 years to figure that out. And I don't want it to take 100 years for us to help our veterans when we know the research is there, when it's a noble endeavor to give these veterans a natural homeopathic. It's so good that the pharmaceuticals have even tried to develop a synthetic marijuana. And you're like, good God Almighty, why would you do that when you've got a natural thing right here? I thank you for your time. I thank you for your service to your community and to our veterans. And I appreciate your thoughtful consideration and helping us to help our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. Jeff Field with Cannabis Inc. I represent industry interests both in Florida and across the country, work with legislators, community leaders, veterans groups like Lois on cannabis education and providing information about current research, products. And what's very interesting is doing some research over the weekend about Bonita Springs more. what's not listed, there are no dispensaries right now, but there certainly are dozens of liquor stores and pharmacies in Bonita Springs that are prescribing opioids and selling alcohol to residents of Bonita Springs. And doing a little more research about how many opioid overdoses there were in Bonita Springs and Lee County last year is staggering. Statistically, states that have enacted medical marijuana legislature in 2016 recognized a 25% reduction in opioid overdose deaths. 25. So if you apply that to the number of deaths in Lee County, you're talking about dozens of people that would be alive today. And as previously mentioned, we're not talking about people smoking, young kids smoking pot on corners. This is a very restricted program. Businesses like myself will be investing tens of millions of dollars into the state of Florida to open and operate these very compliant businesses. And I can assure you that we and our shareholders would not risk those types of investments to divert product to illegal sales. It's not going to happen. There's too much money at stake in our businesses. So again, as I mentioned on Wednesday, we really urge the council to be forward-thinking and be the first community in Lee County to allow access to the 71% of residents that voted for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. Rita Height, a 12-year resident of Bonita Springs. I debated whether I would come up here and share something with you because I'm usually up here talking about the river, but and I haven't got up. I've been here before when this has been on the agenda, and the reason I'm getting up today is because I'm a chronic migraine sufferer, chronic, since I've been 15 years old. So when I get these debilitating migraines, my only option is painkillers right now. Fentanyl, Opana ER, and if I don't take them, I'm in bed. It's important, and I know this council is very thorough in what it does, but it's important for you to see a face to a person that would benefit if we had one of those brick and mortar buildings here in our city. This is one of the most progressive, forward-thinking cities that I have had the opportunity to live in. And I have, because of my union background, lived in many other cities. But I just wanted you to know that there's a face out there that would benefit from this. I would rather lay in bed for days than take the pain medication that has been prescribed by my neurologist. I know that by taking the cannabis oil or the tea bags or whatever it is that's out there would greatly help my ability to function in society. And that's all I want to do, is be able to function every day in society. So that's the reason I got up here today. You know, now I'm branded as one of those opioid users, but think about what you're going to do. The city is not going to deteriorate if we get marijuana dispensaries in there. I think it would be an opportunity for the citizens here to have some pain relief. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Good morning.
Morning. Omer Jor, local resident here. I've got absolutely no interest whatsoever in medical marijuana, except it's the right thing to do. The constituents voted for it. I know a lot of friends and family that have been affected by it and actually genuinely need it. Not here in Bonita Springs, so it wouldn't affect them at all. But there are people here in Bonita Springs. The residents voted for it. Elected officials are elected representatives to represent the will of the people. A lot of the arguments against it seem to be that there's all kinds of negative stuff that comes along with specifically the medical marijuana dispensaries. But while the proponents of it seem to be able to show a lot of data of what's happened in states where they have allowed that and the dispensaries they have allowed it, the people that are against it haven't really shown a whole lot of situations in which a medical marijuana dispensary has actually caused the type of things that the fearmongers tend to push forward. So I haven't seen that. I haven't gone by a medical marijuana dispensary and seen a bunch of 16-year-olds outside, skipping class. So just wanted to put my 2 cents out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public? Good morning.
Good morning. Dr. Lois Bolin, I wanted to thank you for coming before I even said, and she won't say it about herself, but Dr. Lois Bolin is one of the most fierce advocates in Southwest Florida for our vets, and her husband, Wayne Smith, isn't just a veteran. He was shot down and he shared cell with John McCain. He's a hero. And the work that she does on behalf of that community is outstanding, and I'm pleased that she was able to make it here today. And she's here today because this is such a serious issue. Mr. Mayor, Council, my fellow Venetians, Jesse Purdon for the record. And before I get into my comments on the issue at hand, I'd like to discuss a logistical issue I have with this meeting. Notice for this meeting went out Friday. For today's meeting on Monday morning at 8:30. Though it's technically allowed, according to our charter, it doesn't make it right, especially on an issue this significant. This meeting could have been Friday at 5 p.m. I think we can all agree this is almost reminiscent of what the federal government does with their document drops on Friday evening, so everything gets lost in the sauce of the weekend. It's disappointing. Back to the issue at hand. Let's not kid ourselves into pretending this is a zoning in progress issue. Zoning in progress component is simply a vehicle or a bridge that will allow the moratorium to continue, even after meeting its fate last week, 3-3. That's not how this is supposed to work. If that's how it was supposed to work, then it would have worked that way last week. More time is the exact same thing that happened with the Bonita Village project. It was the attempted torpedo in the Bonita Village project. Exact same thing. Same song, different verse. This moratorium was initially put in place so that all of the critical issues could be figured out. Here we are 1 year later, people in Bonita Springs suffering with a constitutional right to these moratoriums, but here we are talking about let's kick the can down the road a little bit farther. This is a direct attempt to circumvent the voice of the people by using technical procedures and regulations to the advantage of something that is not the will of the people of Bonita Springs. 6,496,157 Floridians voted to amend the Florida Constitution, legalizing medicinal marijuana for individuals with specific disabilities, diseases, and conditions, as determined by a licensed physician. 220,751 voters right here in Lee County, and over 71% of the citizens of Bonita Springs have spoken on this issue. Now we're going to sidestep that with bureaucratic politics. This is why people have little faith in the process. 8:30 a.m. meetings with 12-hour notice. This is why. Those brick and mortar facilities, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
These brick and mortar facilities are for the weakest among us. They aren't for me. I'm healthy. It's for our vets with PTSD. It's for the children with cancer. It's for the elderly people with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. These folks' lives have enough going on and enough expense as it is, and we are currently trying to put more barriers in their way to access these things that they so much need. Their families know they need them. If you've ever been around somebody who uses it, then you would understand too. Pointing to other municipalities and saying, look at Collier County doesn't make Collier County right. It means that Collier County also didn't listen to the voice of the people. Over 71% of the people who live in this city voted for it. Those are the same people who put you all in those chairs. Now here we are, 8:30 on a Monday, trying to make more obstacles in the way of progress. This is exactly what happened when the Florida Constitution was amended to allow same-sex couples to get married. What happened? All these podunk municipalities tried to put up barriers to progress, barriers to where we were going because they didn't agree with it on principle. That's not right. We're putting Bonita Springs on the wrong side of history here, and we're doing it at the expense of the weakest among us, the people that we're supposed to be protecting. Before you vote today, at this Monday morning 8:30 a.m. meeting, to put up more barriers to access to the weakest among us, I ask you to think about, what if it was your family member with stage 4 cancer? Well, a little drop can make all the difference. Or what if they shake so bad that that little drop is the only thing that can make it bearable to talk, to live? We're in the middle of an opioid crisis on a national and a state level, and here we are playing bureaucratic politics. I ask you to consider the over 70% of the electorate, the constituents, put you in those chairs that you'll be ignoring. Listen, we're not always going to agree. 90% of the time I agree with all of you. I consider you all personal friends, but right is right. The people have spoken on this issue, and I ask you, at this pivotal point in Bonita Springs history, to keep us on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Good morning.
Morning. Bill Estrom, Bonita Springs resident, and I had no idea I was going to be talking to you this morning until I saw the news article on Channel 2 at 6:30 this morning, so I thought I'd come down and talk. I'm a service-disabled veteran, and right now I don't really have any diagnosis or need for medical marijuana, although I've been diagnosed with glaucoma, but it's not severe enough right now. But my wife, the past 20 years, has been suffering with a variety of illnesses related to fibromyalgia. She's been trying to get her license or whatever it is to use medical marijuana. That's been a huge bureaucratic mess. Hours on the phone waiting to get through to people at whatever state agency is doing the registrations. So that's a roadblock that's been there. And now, we know that we'll get through the process. She's going to be finishing up getting the stuff that she needs. And then I talked to her on the way out the door. She'd be here too, it's just she doesn't feel well enough to be here. But she said, well, we're just going to use the mail order to get our medical marijuana when it comes. We don't really need to worry about the local access. But I think, yes, we do need to worry about it, because as has been pointed out by several people, this is something that the state constitution allows, that the people have voted for. So I just wanted to say that I really hope that you can vote positively to support the dispensaries here in Bonita Springs. And you look at what's going on right now with opioids. If nothing else, that one issue, this is such a small risk compared to what we're facing right now with opioids. And so, if we should be shutting down CVS and Walgreens instead of shutting down dispensaries. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. My name's David Welch, citizen of Bonita Springs for 17 and a half years now. I was hit by a car up in Massachusetts 17 and a half years ago, and I have 4 bulging discs, pinched nerves, bone spurs, and arthritis in the neck, the center of the back, the lower of the back. I get sciatica down the legs into the feet where I can't even walk some days. This finger here right now, I couldn't even pick my nose. I go to a doctor. He says, how's your pain level today on a 1 to 10? I tell him 50. 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, 10 here. I've been on Vicodin for 3. I get 3 a day. They last 4 hours each. Do the math. I have to pick what time of the day I don't want to be in pain. It took me 1.5 Vicodin to get up here today, just to be here. If I vaped, I could have done a half of one, 2 little puffs, and I would have been fine. I ride a motorcycle. This is my clutch hand. If I can't ride that bike, I'll be taking a bottle of. They talk about opiate crisis. Help me. I don't want to take them. Years ago, they were talking about taking the acetaminophen out of the hydrocodone. Some jerk up in Washington says, leave it in. If they blow out a liver, we know who's abusing it. It is so difficult for me to get the oil. I take the same thing, 1.5 to go down to NCH to see my neurologist every month. I get the first appointment of the day, 8 o'clock. I sit in a chair for 3/4 of an hour before he comes in, and I'm in pain. I leave there in pain. I go to the supermarket, get my prescription, go home. What am I going to do? Take my other 1.5? Everybody that, when I first got hit by the car, they told me, if you don't know anybody that has been hit by a car and in pain 24/7, they don't know what you go through. And you've had people coming up here, not one question from any of you. It baffles the hell out of me. Put a dispensary down here at Publix next to Happy Harry, the liquor store. That would help me out. No way can I go up to North Fort Myers. Any questions?
Other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to item 5. Audrey.
Thank you. You have an item, one item on the agenda, but it's broken out into 3 parts, and this is discussing City Council's February 21st agenda item relating to the ordinance extending the moratorium on medical marijuana and any steps you wish to take for affirmative direction to staff. I believe that at this time it's appropriate for Councilman O'Flynn to proceed forward, and then I can provide any legal guidance that you desire.
Yeah, I just want to provide some brief background, and let me start by saying thank you for everybody who has spoke today so thoughtfully and eloquently. It clearly is the case that a supermajority of Florida voters voted on Amendment Number 2 for access to medical marijuana. And so, you know, that's why we're here today. And in my view, I have a point I want to make about City Council, and then really the issue to me is the bricks and mortar, which is part of access, but it's the bricks and mortar. So here's the point on council, and I'm kind of proud of the way everybody on this council works together thoughtfully. We've had a lot of successes, including a great team effort that we talked about at the last meeting having to do with the quadrant. And I like to think we pride ourselves on thoughtful, deliberative decision-making. So that's the context in which I asked for this to come forward, and I believe 4 members of council asked the required 4 of staff. And there have been questions about the process, and I'm sure staff can address that. I do agree this is quick. I do agree with that. But the reason that I asked for it to be brought forward is the following. We had a meeting in January where there were 6 people here. I think Greg was not here. And there was a supermajority that voted to direct staff to progress with respect to extension of the moratorium. No one spoke against it. 5 people spoke for it. So I think it's fair that it was unclear what the exact extension would be to when. But that was the consensus of this body. So last week, we had what turned out to be a 5 or a 6 hour meeting. And somewhere around the 5th hour, I had to leave because I work on, with respect to bikes, paths, and what we're trying to do on the railroad for the city with the Estero. Then I got a call later that night from one of the reporters, and he said, well, the city council passed the medical marijuana dispensaries in the city. Well, it was 3 people. 3 people who I respect, but that's 3 out of 7. 3 out of 7 council members. So I just have a view that in our democracy, 3 out of 7 is not a majority, and that it's appropriate, if we can, to have 7 people talk about it. It's as simple as that. We've never had a significant matter in this city decided by 3 out of 7 people. So that's the reason I thought it would be, in my view, necessary to have all of council deliberate with respect to something of such significance. That's it. And that's why I suggested this meeting take place. Now, I asked staff, how do we put ourselves in that position? Because I do agree this is tight on timing. And Audrey came up with what you see here as a procedural matter. I'll tell you, leaving the legalities aside, what I'd like to do is set up something so that in the very near future, not way in the future, after the state legislation session is over, we have a thoughtful, deliberative discussion on this and decide once and for all. That's where I am on it. So.
Okay. Thanks. Mike?
Well, I do have a problem with this being 8:30 on a Monday after, just getting notice on Friday. So I do think this is way too fast to do. The previous motion to extend the moratorium didn't pass because you need 4 votes to pass it. So it's not that 3 decided we weren't going to have it. It's just, 3, wasn't enough to pass it. My problem with the moratorium is it was supposed to be a temporary moratorium. When we first started talking about it, a year was thrown around, but we got it down to 6 months because a majority of us had concern that a year was too long. We wanted to help the people that voted for this, and we want to deliver it to them in a brick and mortar building in Bonita Springs. Things happened. We were kind of hoping things would change a little bit with the legislature, so we went another 6 months. So, it went up to a year now. So my problem is just extending it again. These temporary moratoriums are really, as long as you keep extending them, it really is just an outright ban without saying an outright ban that's going to anger people that voted to put us here. So I'm not in favor of bringing this up again. I'm not in favor of instituting another moratorium. And I think maybe once I voted for a zoning in progress because I'm very against zoning in progress. So that's my feelings on it. I believe the people have a right to buy it locally. At the last meeting I said I can, and I have gotten prescriptions in the mail at home, but I choose not to. I like to go to the pharmacy at Publix, talk to my pharmacist, and have things explained if I have any questions. I am not a fan of having to call on the phone and wait on hold for hours to talk to somebody just to hopefully get an answer. So I think, for the people that elected us here, we need to do this for them. I've been up to the dispensary in North Fort Myers. It is a long drive to get there, and I drove there in the evening when there's no traffic. I can only imagine doing that during the day with all the traffic. But if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't even know it was there. I had to look for the strip mall that it was in and drive in there. And my only issue, I didn't kind of like the signage, but Fort Myers is much more laxed on signage than we allow, so I don't think that would be a problem here. So, as I said, I'm against doing this. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Fred?
Oh, the couple things I want to say before I give you what my thought is on this. When the election was held, where the overwhelming majority, supermajority, voted in favor of the medical marijuana, Big Brother hadn't got into the act. Big Brother in this case is the state of Florida. Naples had a nice solution to medical marijuana. They said it had to be in what's called their hospital zoning areas. Bonita thought that we would have the same ability. We wanted to wait until the state weighed in and came up with their regulations, and then we would come up with appropriate areas in the city where the dispensaries would be permitted. Unfortunately, in this case, Big Brother state of Florida came along and they said, well, you're going to have to allow these to go in any place that a drugstore is right now legally allowed to go into, with some exceptions that you can't be within 500 feet of a church and a couple other things. In addition to that, they gave you two choices, at least in the beginning, which was you either let it open or you ban it. And the council went ahead and said, well, let's get it, have the moratorium go further. Hopefully they'll clarify this. Well, unfortunately, Big Brother hasn't moved an inch. And it does not appear that they're going to. Now, at the last meeting, to their credit, I think, two different city council members said something. I think it was Councilman DeWitt and Councilman Gibson, which caught my attention, and that was that, well, we could let the moratorium expire, die, allow several dispensaries to get permitted or approved, and then we could ban further dispensers and all that, and those that are here would be grandfathered in. Now, truthfully, had that vote last week, Wednesday, the 21st, been 4-3, where we would simply have moved it to the second reading, I was going to ask Audrey to get two opinions, one from her, one from special counsel. Was the concept that was discussed, and it was, no one said we couldn't do it, but that doesn't mean we could, but is that legal? And if it was, then I would not vote for it at the second reading. So what I would like to see is to follow, in fact, I've already drafted up a memorandum on just that very thing with the questions, just basically with that hypothetical, would it be legal could we do it that way? Now, if we could, I think it would be a good thing. I would certainly want to have at least 2 to 3 open up. Reason for more than one, competition, because we're all talking about pricing. I'm smart enough to know that there is a delivery charge that's tacked on when you call and get it through the mail. I don't know what it is, but it's not going to be cheap. Even if it's $10, it mounts up. So I think what I would hope that everybody could tolerate is let us get the answer to that question. Now, I'm not saying even if we find out that that's not legal, that I will not support what some of my good friends in the room have asked for, but I'd like at least to explore that. And you're looking at probably 2 to 3 weeks at the worst case. I do know our special counsel is intently in work on preparing for a trial. I think it's next week. But between that and our next meeting, even if it's after the trial, they should be. This can't be that big of a deal to figure out and come up with a legal opinion. So that's my thoughts. I do think that we do need to do something. The majority of the people have spoken, and I'm not a member of the political elite, but I think that I hate to rely on the government not at hand to take care of them. It's kind of like if the guy that was sheriff of Broward was suddenly going to be our sheriff, I'd be worried. So that's my statement.
Great. Thanks, Fred. Amy?
Thank you, Councilman Forbes. I think you expressed certain things that have been going through my mind, and I voted to advance the last the public hearing to the second reading, just because I did not believe. I mean, it was sort of in the past we have done that almost routinely, unless there's some specific reason when we have not done that. And the reason that and we started to talk about it a little bit at the last meeting, and I think the fact that was in our 5th hour of the meeting, that everybody sort of got tired and we just couldn't address the things as we should, because we realized that the state is not going to do what I think is really their responsibility, is to provide mechanism by which cities can make decisions. And we argue about this time and time again in all kinds of areas. So I was in favor, and I still am in favor of us having a deliberate discussion about various aspects of this. And so many times council people have said, we're not trying to prevent people from getting their medicine, because we're very aware of all these stories that we hear about, and no one is insensitive to that who've had any personal interaction with people that are sick. So I am in favor of trying to start a mechanism by which the city really figures out how we can, in a sense, overcome the weaknesses that are in the state legislation. And so I'm thankful that we're having this discussion here, but I was on the other side, so it's normal. I haven't changed my mind. I just didn't feel we have addressed this properly. We didn't address it. We did kick the can down the line because we thought the state was going to act, and they didn't. And they're not going to there's no bill now, so they're not. Once they are closed, we're not going to have any guidance. So we did start the discussion because we asked our city attorney and our staff to try to provide us with information about various aspects of this, and but we haven't given it the full court press because we've obviously been busy with some other things at this, and I didn't feel that we were preventing our citizens from getting the medication they need, and even though perhaps there are some difficulties in getting it now that I'm more aware of than I was 6 months ago, I still kind of feel that way. So I am in favor of trying to do something, but in the same sense, we should direct our staff to do some research so that we can do this in a thoughtful way going forward. And I am disappointed that it was a 3-3 tie and it didn't go forward, because it was in the second reading that we were supposed to be having this discussion. We never had the discussion. We didn't have time to have the discussion. Everyone was anxious to get on to the next agenda item. So I think we're doing the right thing. And I'm sorry that it took, we did it so quickly, but what else are we going to do? We would have been left naked, so to speak, in how we were going to address these things. Perhaps it would have turned out fine, but we're not sure. So I'd rather do it in a thoughtful way, and I hope that we can develop a mechanism by which we take this into our own hands as best we can. It's not ideal because of what the state has done, but I'm willing to, to face it head on in a thoughtful way.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Greg?
A few things. First of all, to me, this isn't something that's new to the United States. It's new to Florida. 1996, California voted to have medical marijuana. So, California's kind of paved the way for us to see what to do, what not to do. It is disturbing that the state hasn't helped us out at all. But then again, we keep saying we're going to have these discussions, how are we going to address it? It's been a year and we haven't had it. We are busy, and it just seems like something else always comes up. I know we had a hurricane, we had flooding. Those things took precedence over this. But now, what's the next thing that's going to take precedence over this when we have, like everybody has said, opioid addiction, opioid deaths? I mean, right now in the state of Florida, they're talking about letting the police officers have Narcan or naloxone to stop these things. We run them every day at the fire department. It's one more thing that I think that if we can get people off the opioids, it does make a difference. There's only 4 states in the United States right now that have that do nothing with medical marijuana or any type of thing. So I think I think it's out there already. It's been proven that it does help. I'm just ready to stop putting the roadblocks up. Coincidentally enough, every day I get a thing from, it was back in my union days, and some stuff going on in California with the unions and pensions and stuff. Just today, it
You make it sound like those are former days.
Well, they are former days.
They're current days as well. my
They
friend.
are, but I mean, I'm just saying, when I subscribe to it.
Yeah, right.
And you know, again, I'm looking at California, 1996 is when they did medical marijuana. Right now, an article, and it's called the Sacramento Bee, talks about 2 things. One, marijuana has gotten so prevalent for the medical side, they're looking at veterinarians now. Right now, no vet can give it to their animals, dogs, cats, animals that have, you know, when fireworks happen, thunderstorms, they've tried the comfort jackets. Now they're looking to medical marijuana to calm these pets down during those things. So they're paving the way again. The second part of it is that the headline reads, are you getting medical marijuana delivered to you? If so, it's probably illegal, because they are having a problem now with these couriers not being licensed like Uber drivers or like cab drivers or like whatever, getting this medical marijuana from somewhere other than is licensed in the state and then delivering it. So, you know, they're having problems with that now. I just don't want us to see the state of Florida have that problem. If we have the dispensaries here, we don't have to worry about someone driving into Bonita Springs illegally. So I don't know when we're going to have this discussion. It's been a year already, and I believe, talking to Audrey, we spoke about it last time, I'll put it out there, and it may be political suicide, but I think it would be a jerk move that we let 3 or 4 in, then we close the door. But that's what we're going to have to do. Well, it's a jerk move. Hey, come on in, and all of a sudden, all right, close the door, slam the door. But it's what we need to decide as a council. The state didn't give us that luxury to say, we want 4, we want 2, we want 7. They didn't give us that luxury, so we'll have to do the end around, move the goalpost, whatever word you want to use or analogy you want to use, if we have to do it that way. The state has taken it upon themselves to be silent on it. For whatever reason, maybe they were upset with the way it came about, and this was their way to thumb their nose at it, to kick the ball down to us. I just think the time is now. We've did it a year. We haven't had that discussion, that hard discussion, and I'm just worried about we may not have that hard discussion because flooding may come back up. We're coming into, in my world, brush fire season. We may look into that. We've got the DRGR. We've got Logan Road coming through where we need to talk about what we're doing there. We've got the quadrant study. These are all important things that we need to look at for the infrastructure of Bonita Springs. This is something also that we can put it on our zoning department or our community development to look at, to help us regulate as much as we can legally. And if we get a flood of 30 or 40 of them, then we're going to have to deal with it. I don't think that's going to happen when you're looking at Lee County has opened it up in unincorporated, and we have 1 in North Fort Myers. So I don't think by doing this, it's going to open the floodgates to Bonita Springs. So that's my opinion. Just for what it's worth, some of the reason this was today or so early, I'm unavailable on Thursday and Friday, so that may have been an issue of why we couldn't add later on in the week. I apologize if it's inconvenient, but I have prior engagement. I have relatives coming in and out of town on Thursday and Friday. So,
Thanks, Greg. Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We have a tendency, I'm going to be blunt, we have a tendency to beat issues to death. And Mike, I think you said it best. Greg, I agree with you. And we can talk all we want about this. Nothing's going to change my mind. I want this to move forward. And there's the people had their voice today, and I agree with all of you. We need to not delay. No moratorium. Let's go.
Now, thanks for all those comments. And when you look at, the discussion here, and I spoke with a member of the state legislature over the weekend, that's right. The state is not going to do anything. They're not going to act on this. They're not going to interpret it. The feedback I got back was it's state law. It's up to you to interpret how you want to enact it, let it come through, let it not come through in your city. And where we sit here and argue for home rule, guess what? This is a home rule issue. The state legislature is not going to interpret this for us. It's state law. It was passed. Now it's up to us to how to interpret it. I might have a little different spin on the interpretation, but that's me. That's one person's opinion. There is no way, no how I want to deny people that need this and are medically proven to have this medicine at all. But at the risk of letting quote-unquote head shops set up in town, I have zero interest in that too. Zero. Less than zero. Right? That's a TV show, I think, Less Than Zero. No, that's Life Below Zero. But less than zero to let head shops set up in town. So, what's the hybrid there? I know there's a CVS pharmacy. I know there's a Walgreens pharmacy. I know there's X, Y, and Z pharmacies around town. Why can't we work this through the pharmacies, the businesses, the pharmacists that are here? If there's, and I see shaking of the heads no from the private enterprise people, if this is a true compassion for the medicine at hand, for the cannabis at hand, and not just a cash cow for a private business to come into town and make millions while hiding behind the emotion that it's a medical need, I see a need, I see a room there for compromise. I see room there to accomplish both goals. I see a way for people to get their medicine without being gouged by a private enterprise. I'm a fiscally conservative Republican. I am all about free enterprise. Absolutely, positively. But on this issue, I detect, I sense that there are people using the poor, the weak, the sick on an emotional heartstring issue, a medical need, if you will, for hammering down, drilling down that they need to have their own private company to do this. I don't think you need your own private company to do this. In fact, I know you don't. There's a CVS pharmacy. There's a Walgreens pharmacy. There's a Publix. There's all different number of needs of people that we can get this medicine, we can get this product, we can get the lollipops, we can get the chocolate brownies, whatever they are, whatever form they come in, we can figure it out. It's up to us in Bonita Springs to figure it out. Then you get the people that need the medicine, that have to have this medicine, and I want them to have this medicine, but we're not setting up head shops around town. That's where I stand on it. If you disagree with it, then you're not true compassionate that the people need the medicine. If you think you need an independent head shop for this to happen, you're looking at it from a different point of view. I understand, ma'am. This isn't a debate. It's my turn. I've listened to all of you patiently. This is my thought. This is my opinion on it. That's where I stand on it. When we have answers to those questions, I'm ready to move forward on this. And Audrey, I would like a process from you on where we are with that. Could we get this medicine to the folks that need it through our existing pharmacies? Could they rent space from the existing pharmacies, the existing businesses? And in my mind, now I'm one person, we're a city of 50,000, but when you want to talk about a compromise on the issue, to get the folks that medically proven need the medicine, medically proven that they need it, do we have to have an independent business in town to accomplish that?
All right, so please let me answer at this point, and I'm going to answer your question through explaining a little bit about the federal process as well as the state process. So under the federal process, because marijuana is listed as a scheduled drug, pharmacies, the traditional pharmacies, whether it's CVS or Walgreens, cannot sell it. In addition, under the state statute, because the state statute requires that you only have one product being sold at the facility. You cannot sell it under the state scheme. In addition to that, we heard the word mail. It's not mail, it's courier service, because again, that's a federal issue. And then there is the banking issue, and we've all talked about the Cole Memorandum in the past. And the Cole Memorandum was kind of a don't ask, don't tell for medical marijuana, but that was taken away under the new administration. They relinquished that. So you have a financial issue, you have the courier, not mail, so it's not the same as Express Scripts. And you have the fact that the state statute, as well as the federal laws, would prohibit CVS or Walgreens selling medical marijuana. Now let me talk a little bit more about the state process, and that's vertical alignment. So the way the state statute is set up, and I do not know if Colorado follows the same type of scheme or other states, but in the state of Florida, it's called vertical alignment. So the entity that is allowed a dispensing facility is also pretty much the entity who cultivates it, processes it, and transports it. You don't have a standalone facility. That facility is related to the others. One of the facilities that, actually I believe the one in Fort Myers, got into a little, I was talking to one of my counterparts, and he explained to me they got into a little bit of trouble because they did pull additional permits when they were shopping for a location. That's why you don't, some of the material that I provided you today is dated. The Lakes Park location, for example, was withdrawn. They were trying to franchise, and they cannot franchise under the state scheme with vertical alignment. So they got a little bit in trouble on that. The slots are very limited, and when Councilman Forbes mentioned he would want maybe 2 or 3 facilities here, if you go to the back sheet on the list of MMTCs that are open in open in Florida, you can see even in the very large cities, there's only 2 to 3 and maybe 1 or 2 adjacent cities. So the chances of getting multiple facilities is very limited. Probably you would get one facility, and whether or not that facility had the right formula that you want would be another problem, but that's something that would be addressed by the patients.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, Amy,
Would
then
you just
Peter.
clarify what you just said in regard to, you referred to just a couple of facilities in each of the cities. What is limiting them from not having more?
The state scheme, the state vertical alignment, it's not something where there are a lot of people who can get licensed. So the state, if you go to the Florida Department of Health medical marijuana website, you'll see that it is a very difficult process. There was a period of time where they were sued, so they licensed some people, then they took some others out. You'll see that there's some legislation, and they're amending some of that. The cap, I believe in...
Okay, but licensure doesn't have anything to do with location. Is that
Like,
correct?
yes, it
It's
does have
just
to do with location.
It does
because
or does not?
It does, because
What
if
is
you
that?
pull up the state statute, which is pages 1 through 24 in your attachment right after the white paper provided to council, let me go through. The actual location, well, and the amount of how many they're allowed to have is located on page 8, and it's actually section 8, as to how many applications. For example, they might have only, they had 10 applicants, and then they had a few additional licenses that could go in, and then each of them are given slots for where they can have dispensing facilities. They're not allowed to have more than 25 slots until the registry hits 100. Now I'm on page 9, subsection 5. And it explains, and that's how they do the math. And then there's a maximum number in the location area for Northwest. It's broken out into 5 regions. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 regions. So they'd have 5 licenses, and then they would be allowed, or I'm sorry, 25 licenses, pretty much 5 per region.
Right, but that's just, but it doesn't say, like, if they were going to give a license to Bonita Springs, they don't have any control of where in Bonita Springs it would occur. Is that correct?
The only control you have is listen in the
No,
actual.
the licensing procedure, not us.
The licensing procedure in the subsection 11, on page 20 of that section, has the only limiting location is 500 feet from any real property that is a public or private elementary school, middle school, or secondary school. So that's very typical in zoning. We have similar for COPs. So for example, if somebody wanted to put something near Bonita Charter, there'd be a 500 zone prohibition at that location. Spring Creek, Bonita Elementary, the middle school. I don't think there's anything near the middle school, the new the new high school. So the commercial nodes would have to also have that restriction.
Okay. Thank you. Peter? No?
Yeah, I guess maybe yes. What I'd like to, there are a lot of questions here, and you have Fred's suggestion, and Greg, maybe we can relabel that one.
Oh, same question.
Yeah. What I'd like to suggest is, so let me tell you that from my own personal perspective, to share a little bit, over the weekend I did drive up to North Fort Myers. I talked to several people last week. I went on the registry. I looked up the doctors in the area, including several dozen doctors in Bonita and Collier who are authorized to, they don't use the word prescribe under the federal law, but they can in effect order. Talked to one doctor, talked to a nurse about how it works with the situation with the home delivery. And just to be clear to not the people here, but anybody who is watching City Council, it is, medical marijuana is available today in Bonita Springs by going to a doctor, properly qualifying, getting on the state registry, having the doctor fill out an order with a maximum of 70 days prescription. They don't call it prescription, they call it an order, and having that filled by home delivery. There is a fee for that. So I don't want to sound like an instant expert, but there's been a lot thrown around here and some suggestion, I think inadvertent to people who are not knowledgeable, that it's not available today. We're simply talking about the bricks and mortar, and in summary, under bricks and mortar, we've been compromised on home rule once again. I'd like to make a suggestion that we set a date certain, about a month from now. There have been questions asked. I think Fred's question is, when I first heard it, I thought kind of like Greg thought, but I'm not so sure. It may be a practical way to deal with it, have that research done, and set a date certain, and I'm suggesting the first meeting in April, to come back and make a final decision, rather than just kind of responsibly ask Audrey a bunch of questions here today is my suggestion. And whatever it takes to get us there. So if it technically is a zoning in progress, technically is a statement with respect to advancing the moratorium, we do that, but it's not intended to be a year moratorium, a 6-month moratorium. It's intended to create a bridge to that date when we can have a deliberative discussion. And one other suggestion I would make is we have a city attorney. I did spend some time with on the phone with a fellow who has represented Estero on this. Audrey knows him. He knows this stuff inside out, every nuance. He can tell you exactly how many are allowed or not allowed. I think it's important enough that my suggestion would be that Audrey work with him to make a presentation at that April meeting, and then we'll decide and be done. That's my suggestion.
Okay. Thanks, Peter. Mike?
Well, a couple things. I did just want to point out that Bonita does have at least one head shop that I know of in Bonita. Not that I go there, but I know that it exists because I drive past it almost every day.
How could we have
And the fact that there aren't 30 of them in town, kind of goes to the point that we probably won't have 30 of the medical marijuana dispensaries. It's all supply and demand. That's the way we have to look at it. Allowing them in and then like throwing up a quick ban after to have 2 or 3. I don't believe that's the American way. It's capitalism. That's more communist to me. We're going to allow 2 or 3 in. We're going to choose those 2 or 3 possibly, and then we're going to shut the door for everybody else. No, we need to allow competition, and that's because that is what drives our economy, and that's what keeps the price down is competition. If 30 of them opened, I know 30 wouldn't exist a few years from now because there's no way that there's going to be enough demand for 30 of them. I'm not in favor of prolonging this. I'm not in favor of waiting until April. I don't see why we can't just bring it up at the next meeting, our next scheduled meeting. And the other thing is, looking at this packet there and the rules that the state put in place, it can't be a head shop. They're not allowed to sell anything else except for the medical marijuana there. They can't sell any other delivery devices, bongs, things like that a head shop would have. It's very clinical. There's a waiting room. There's a private consultation area. And, just look at the pictures that were in the packet. It looks more like a high-end, store that would sell purses or things like that than, a medical marijuana shop. So that's my argument. I don't think we should really prolong this anymore. I won't be voting for the moratorium or the zoning in progress. And I hope that we could get this going at the next meeting if we want to discuss it any further.
And a question on that point, because our next meeting is scheduled for March 7th, but this is due to run out March 2nd. How does that work, Audrey?
So, very similar to when we were on council, or when you were on council during the homeless shelter, and we received an application while things were pending. It's not necessarily a race to the permit counter, and that's the Smith v. Clearwater. That's where you would invoke the zoning in progress during the process. Now, for zoning in progress, of course, there needs to be some formulation of zoning. I did put some in the resolution if we're going to be modifying our definitions of drugstore, pharmacy, and then go through what we would want to have any modifications there, as well as going forward with, unless, if you wanted to do a ban, which could also be in that zoning in progress resolution.
Well, let me ask this. If we were to look at this for March 7th, just trying to, here again, compromise on everything to get where we need to be. We're due to run out March 2nd. What if we were to vote here today to extend that to March 7th to the next meeting?
I can't do that. We had an ordinance, and the ordinance was advertised pursuant to Florida Statute 166-041, and our charter requires that we follow that, as well as state law. So once the ordinance did not go through in the first reading, and there was no additional motions that night, that ordinance ended at that time. The advertisement for that ordinance ended at that time. So one of the reasons for having this meeting earlier in the week rather than later in the week was so that I could meet the I believe it's 7-day, I don't bring it with me, the 7-day requirement for the first ad before the first hearing. So if you want it for March 7th to have a first reading, so we start the clock again, I can do the March 7th first reading, and that way Ms. Philippek can advertise it for the first reading. We can do the March 8th LPA, and then a final and second reading on March 21st.
Well, and I'll just be clear here, and I will say this. We should have been dealing with this a lot sooner than this. Here we are spinning our wheels, figuring out we got something that we can't amend to go past March 2nd. We have a special meeting this morning. We have people that need a product, and here we are, spinning our wheels.
I believe the short answer that I heard in the middle of that is to get us to March 7th or April 4th or whatever date. She technically needs, because of what happened at the last meeting, a zoning in progress and/or a moratorium suggestion, and that gets us there.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's
All right,
correct.
thank you,
And
thank you, thank you. I just wanted to summarize that.
Okay, so there is a way to get there.
Right, there is a way to
Great.
get there.
Thank you. Mike?
I just had one more question about zoning in progress. I know in the past, people could still apply for a permit as long as they were meeting the criteria that's set forth in, the zoning that's attached with it. Will that be the case here?
Not the way I drafted this particular zoning in progress. This zoning in progress is listed where people would not be able to go forward, because at this time, I don't have direction as to what the documents. Now, remember, the zoning in progress is to eliminate equitable estoppel claims. So people saying, well, you led us on to think that we could get a permit. This makes it very clear that, no, that's not City Council's intent until we figure this out.
And Pete, while I agree another month would be nice, I think this issue needs to be resolved. I agree that more time would be nice, but I don't think we have more time. Would you be amenable to March 7th?
I just am concerned about Derek and the other fellow I mentioned. I mean, what about the next meeting after that, which is the second March meeting? I guess that's halfway between.
I think we're asking staff for a lot of information,
Right.
and I mean, March 7th is like next week or something, and
Right.
I don't think the staff has done their work, and I think that was the whole point of the last resolution, was that we were supposed to tell the staff we wanted them to get on this, that this was a high priority, and it's our fault for not doing that earlier. But there's a lot of things to discuss, and I think that certainly the second meeting in March, and I would be in favor of the first week in April, just to give them the time so that once and for all, we look at all the alternatives. And I agree with, this notion of starting it and stopping it. I had a problem when it was suggested at our meeting last week, but now we're in kind of a mess, and maybe that's the only way we have to do it in a kind of a regular way. So that's where we are. But let's have a thoughtful way of how we deal with the limitation that the state has put on us. And I'm with you. I don't understand why. I mean, I understand because of what Audrey had suggested, but the proper place where this should be is in our CVSs, in every street corner, as part of any kind of drug delivery system. That's my view. That means we have to go to the feds first and then the states in order to do that. So I'm in favor of that solution. But given that, if we had a magic wand, I think we should have one on on 41, one on Bonita Springs, and we should have a third. I don't even think if we're eligible to have third, but just conveniently geographically located so people who are all over our community can have access to them if we can't do it the other way. But we can't do that. So let's do something second best or third best, which is probably where we're going to be.
Right. Greg?
I just had a quick comment. Based on what Audrey has told us and what the state's legislation says, that let's use True View or True Live or whatever it's called. True Leave. They've got 13 throughout the state. They only get 25 throughout the state. I don't think they're going to concentrate on putting 4 or 5 in Bonita Springs. Looking at these cities, like City of Miami only has 2, Orlando 2, Tallahassee with the most being 3. So I don't think you're going to see, or we're going to see, a great influx of the 50,000 residents in Bonita Springs, warranting 3, 4, 5 of them. So I just think I'm not in favor of kicking this can down the road. I understand the problem with it. I understand the concern. I really do. I don't think this is like the other issues we did with zoning in progress, being the homeless shelter or something like that. This is a positive, where when we were talking about the homeless shelter, or the previous council was talking about, there was some quite a bit negative stigma that went along with that, and that's why we were doing it, and the location was a bigger area.
Safety concerns.
Safety concerns. So I think that is a little bit different with the zoning in progress. I think we should really hold these zoning in progress like we're wanting to do here for those type of things, not a positive, in my opinion.
If I might suggest, Sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, well, go ahead. You had your hand up?
No, go ahead.
All right, fine. I'd like to suggest the middle meeting in March to get this done once and for all. I'm trying to avoid, in my mind, a piecemeal debate today, or I should say discussion, Greg. A piecemeal discussion today. We have some of these efforts that already have cease and desist orders against them on stuff. We've also heard, without naming names, of some other stuff that's going on. We have a situation where, as far as I know, all of Collier County does not have a dispensary. I believe that's correct. North of us, Estero does not have a dispensary. City of Fort Myers does not, banned it. Fort Myers Beach. So this is more than a Bonita issue. We've got this entire area. It's not the 50,000 people in Bonita. It's everybody from here to Everglades City. I'd like to understand, in my mind, a lot more about this home delivery. I had a good friend call me the other day, and he said, people who don't have money, what about it with respect to them? Otherwise, it's just a matter of home delivery. In my mind, I need to understand that more. And, if home delivery does not practically work, that's highly significant to me. So I just like a few weeks to think about it, whether it's a communist jerk solution or some other idea. Have a bridge, and whatever legal bridge, Greg, it happens to be what Audrey's suggesting, just to get us to the second meeting in March. So I'd actually make a motion to do that.
So, as I understand, the motion would be first reading or just discussion?
I don't know what the legal details are.
I guess I need to know the legal details so I can...
Well, you're the lawyer, so, all right, so the motion is to have to address this once and for all at the second meeting in March and make a final decision. And if our attorney tells us what we need to get there is a zoning in progress with respect to zoning and or moving forward on a moratorium to get us there, that's up. That to me is a legal nicety. But I want to make a final decision on that, and a fully informed decision, not just I went to Fort Myers, somebody else went to Fort Myers, they saw what they saw. A fully informed decision at the second meeting in March.
No, sorry,
Before
Martha.
we-
Fred?
We have an election
Before we
March
s-
15th.
Before we second this, I want to make sure of a couple things. Could we ask the attorney, or attorneys plural, to opine on, is there any way that what the mayor was hoping could be worked out could work? Probably can't, but now you got it from the so-called experts. Also, a better understanding of what this law allows in quantities and all that. And then one last thing, I'd like to hear briefly a comparison between the California statute and the Colorado statutes and the Florida statutes, because they may be miles apart, which is giving us part of our problem. It's that anti-home rule. And I would still like to have, I agree with Councilman O'Flynn bringing in this other party to work with Audrey, but I still want to hear from Theriac, because we want to do this right, and more information is better. But I will tell you that if this goes to where we get to this meeting that has been set, I will change my vote and vote it in anyway. So now we have an incentive.
Mike?
Well, I'm either for hammering this out today or the first meeting next month. I don't think we should draw it out any further, but I'd prefer to do it today. I mean, it was a very short notice. We still got quite a few people to come out on this, very few against. I think there was only one person that spoke against it at the meeting. So, like I said, I'd rather just do this right now.
No. I appreciate that, and while we hear what we can and we can't do, let's remember, folks, this is Bonita Springs, and we're deciding this on behalf of Bonita Springs. So I don't want to hear what we can't do. I want to hear what we can do to get an answer. So to that end, Audrey, where this failed to proceed to a second reading last meeting, correct? I don't, and I'm not laying this on you, but I'm, like everybody here, looking for a resolve on this issue. I don't want to dance through the first reading, worry about the second reading. I want to set a date certain where we're going to resolve this issue. How do we get to that point?
Thank you. And the way I understand the motion, so that I understand the niceties of the legal, the motion is to address the issue in the second meeting of March. What would be implied in that motion that I understand would be I would have the moratorium being extended for March 7th. The meeting dates is scheduled on the agenda. I don't need to read it out because that will run to March 21st. Now, I heard from outside about the election issues. Councilman Slakta will be on council on March 21st. While we have the election, the new person will not be seated until the first meeting in April because certification of elections takes about a week or so. So he's still there, just letting you know. Now, I'd like a second vote as to whether or not you wanted to proceed with the zoning in progress. Now, I talked to the same person that Deputy Mayor O'Flynn did, and he said it's probably overkill, but it doesn't hurt to have it. So, I mean, we can do that. I do want to address Councilmember Carumba's concern as to the dates. I have emails that show I wanted to have things scheduled, but because I had the limiting factor of the LPA, I had to proceed with the dates I had. So I apologize if the ordinance was not brought to you earlier for your consideration, but I had other issues that were pending that caused a scheduling issue. If we couldn't have the hearing or we couldn't do anything till the LPA met on February 22nd, I couldn't do anything with this ordinance earlier. So if that's okay?
Yeah, so I'd make my motion consistent with what Audrey said,
Yeah.
which is for purposes of getting to that date, an extension of the moratorium and the zoning in progress, but with the understanding is that we're going to have a final discussion and a decision at that second March meeting.
And it's not going to be a first reading, a second reading, a this, or that, the other thing, a zig around the block and a zag around, the other block. We're going to have an answer on March 21st, correct, Audrey?
March 21st would be the day. Now, the clerk is concerned about getting the advertisement to the newspaper.
I understand. I don't want to hear any of that. I want to answer, are we going to have an answer on this on March 21st?
It's up to City Council to provide us with the answer. I can provide you with the data and background, which I have been doing. You have the photographs because I provided you the photographs. I will have CJ do the analysis as to California, Colorado, Florida, the regulatory schemes, as well as Dillon's rule, whether it's applicable versus the Homes Rule Power. It's a very good research project for her on that. And I will provide you with the federal information as to the drugstores and quantities, as well as Councilmember Forbes prior to the meeting, and he mentioned it during the meeting, desires to also have a legal memorandum as to the locational requirements if we could do what City of Orlando did.
And I'd like to ask that Mr. Rooney be here to present on that date.
I'll see if he's available for March 21st.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So advertising, we've got just under a month. I think we can handle the advertising aspect of that, correct?
Display ad.
It's a display ad. That's why news press does take about 3 days to get an ad. We're running very tight on schedule, but we're going to try.
I'm not sure.
It's the same advertisement as we did before. So you have the title block already.
Did you have something, Greg?
No, I'm just, don't want to kick it down the road. And again, if we, my concern is the week of the 5th, staff is going to be very busy with a different issue with the DOA hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering if we're putting too much on it, and then we're going to be either ill-informed or not ready on the 21st, and then we're going to have to kick it down the road again. That's my concern.
I agree with you, and we're not going to kick it down as far as I'm concerned. I'd like to cast it as due deliberation on something we haven't had a thought about, as opposed to kicking it down the road, but so be it, all right?
Yes.
Yeah, Greg, I've already said that if we're don't have it all done, I'm going to vote to go ahead anyway, so.
And I'm in that camp too. So, we've waited
Got a
long
second.
enough.
Yeah.
We've played legalese, we've played niceties, we've avoided the will of the people. It's time for an answer. And that answer is going to be March 21st. So I will second your motion, Peter, for March 21st. And my birthday, I might add, and Councilman Schlachter's final meeting. So you're going to go out with a bang, my friend.
Yeah, and my birthday's 7 days later.
Yeah, okay. So there's been a motion and a second to have this resolved. Not a first reading, not a second reading, not an advertising, not an anything.
Well,
yes,
on
there
March
is.
21st.
No, there's
There are gonna-
advertising, there's going to be cost incurred in advertising, and but I need to.
So
see the-
people understand, Audrey, what we're saying. We're going to have an answer on this, folks, March 21st. And I will second that motion with a passion. So is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman DeWitt?
Aye.
Councilman Slakta?
No.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman O'Flynn?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
No.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Motion passes 5.
March 21st it is, folks, and thank you. Thank you very much. Is there anything else for discussion for good of the order? Do we want, why don't we have another public comment? It's not on the agenda, but I will allow public, oh, it is on the back, sorry. Public comment, sorry.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Slatka, Councilman DeWitt, Councilman Gibson. Mayor, thanks for your positive comments. These are not head shops, okay? These are medical medicine dispensaries. There's no smokable item there. There's no hippies inside the door. These are products that help alleviate pain and suffering. Too many people are dying from opioids, but we allow drugstores all over town. Okay, I think there's only 4 entities in the state of Florida competing for 25 licenses. Okay, you're gonna have maybe 1, if we're lucky. You want to revive Old 41? Put it down there. Anyhow, I don't think you're gonna have lines out the door, but you're gonna have access for people in the region. So, I hope you'll vote for it when it comes March 21st. This is not something that we should be afraid of. George Washington grew it. He couldn't be all wrong, could he? No, sir. Founding president of our country. It was considered a medicine up until the 1930s. And then, we had the prohibition, and people were going crazy, reefer madness, and all that kind of stuff. This is not recreational use. This is for people with epilepsy, HIV, Parkinson's, dementia, car accidents, apparently neurological pain, cancer, appetite stimulant. This is not for being, out there getting high. If we want to help reduce the opioid epidemic, this is one of the most positive things our community can do. And I got to tell you, the fact that we have to consider having Narconon in a fire department, a fire district vehicle to save somebody's life, instead of just eliminating the threat. The threat is having all those opioids out there. This is going to relieve the threat. I want you guys to really read up on this, because, I have no dog in this fight right now. I might later on, with the history of my family. My brother's diagnosis was for 2 years. He lived for 6, because of medical marijuana. Lived in another state. Same with my sister, and she lived in another state. My other sister lived in another state. They were able to live longer, be with their children longer, share, with our family longer because of medical marijuana. And I want that for other families. The longer you wait, the more people are suffering and the more people are dying. You're going to have, you got to think about that. Do not delay this any longer. You're not going to. But please vote for it. It's very important. Yes, there are people who are going to make money on this, but there are people making money on opioids right now. And there are people dying, okay? So let's just get over it. It's a simple, natural alleviation for people. It's natural, okay? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Bring it to Bonita Springs.
Thank you. Other members of the public?
Jesse Purdon for the record. I just wanted to say that restarting the clock on this is limiting access to people who need it. Furthermore, I would like to bring it back to Councilman O'Flynn's discussion about what is and is not happening in Collier County and why we should look to Collier County for leadership. The fact that Collier County is going 71% against their electorate does not mean that we should do that. And it is a Bonita issue. You are 100% correct. It's a Bonita issue. We are a proud city, and we are a city that stands on our own 2 feet, and I don't need to look at Naples or anywhere else to tell me what I need to do and what's right for the weakest people among us. I hope you guys do the right thing on the 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Good morning.
Morning. My name's John Walsh. I've been a resident here of Bonita for about 20 years. I have not come to any of the previous meetings or spoken about this issue. There seems to be a very strong lobby here for pro dispensaries, and nobody against it. I'm going to tell you I'm formally against it. I smoked pot in my young years for 12 years. The damage that that did to me personally is irreversible. I don't agree that the medical benefits of marijuana have been proven in any scientific form. I'm not saying that they don't do anything, but I think we all would agree if we had an issue, whether it was for cancer or for any serious health issue, to drive to Fort Myers to get your medication is some kind of an issue. I'm sorry, that doesn't hold water for me. And I'd like to also state that I'd love to have documentation from everybody who spoke what money circumstances are involved, whether you're a lobbyist, whether you're, no, this fellow next to you is a lobbyist.
Hey, this is not the forum for that, sir.
No,
Please
I understand.
stick
It'd
to
be
your
nice-
comments. Thank
yeah,
you.
Okay, it'd be nice to understand what people are here
You
for
can
money
talk with them
purposes.
after the meeting.
Sure, okay. So I don't think it's good for the city of Bonita to have dispensaries. I don't think it's good for Collier County, Lee County, any of those. I think it was mentioned about massage parlors here. I don't think those were good to have in this city. I've seen the deterioration of our city, and I don't think it's going to help our city at all to have dispensaries. I really don't. And I think if you were really honest, every one of you, especially those of you that are for, if you look at the demographics of who lives here, and if you give them the right to vote yes or no and they vote, there won't be dispensaries here. Every single person that lives here, give them a right to vote. Put it on a ballot for them to vote. Do you think we'll have dispensaries?
Point of order.
71% of people in the state of Florida, not Bonita.
Listen, all right, sir, stick to your comments, and
Okay,
audience, respect his time.
I believe that if you put it before all of the people in Bonita and give them adequate time to be informed, there is no way we will ever have a dispensary in the city of Bonita, period. They will not vote for it. And there's no reason to have it. They can go to North Fort Myers and get their drugs. All of us would do the same if we were sick. It's not a big deal. Most of those people can afford the $25 delivery charge if that's what it is. If it can be delivered, why do we need brick and mortar? And you're right. If it's really medical, why is it we can't have it through Walgreens and CVS? Why do we need independent dispensaries? I think that's a subject that really should be discussed by everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Other members of the public? An audience, I will remind you, this is not a forum. Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning. So I just wanted to reiterate before what I said about the delivery system being ineffective, because you specifically, Mr. O'Flynn, paid attention to that, so thank you. I know that this is a very emotional issue for people, but the debate is over. It is legal. We need to figure out a way in our community to make it available in a practical way. And so if you heard nothing else from what I said earlier, please really pay attention to the fact that delivery is not working for all patients. All patients cannot afford it. All patients do not get their medicine on time that is recommended for them because of supply issues. So please, when you're doing your research on the Department of Health and the different guidelines we have, the restricted vertical system, understand that that does affect availability of medicine and delivery. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so much to say. Anyone to say that marijuana has no medicinal value has clearly been living under a rock. It's been used for thousands of years, and no one's ever died. I think I pointed that out earlier. The delivery, yes, people can get their medicine delivered, and that is an available method. Unfortunately, when I gave you guys the statistical data, which I have, again, the analytics to prove, and I'm happy to discuss even further, but 80% of these people are cannabis naive, meaning they tried it maybe once. They don't know what they're doing. And as Mr. O'Flynn had stated, it's not a prescription, it's a recommendation or an order, to be correct. Prescriptions are federally regulated by who? The DEA. And medical marijuana, or marijuana in general, is federally illegal. So the potential of CVS distributing marijuana is a pipe dream, pun intended. So, with that said, the delivery of waiting for a driver to deliver the medicine to a patient that is stage 4 cancer, she's on her way out. She doesn't know how to use the medicine, and I want to also jump and kind of segue here. Bud, the green bud that we're so used to seeing, isn't legal yet. It's not. And I totally agree with that, even though there's some diehard hippies that would be really upset at me for stating that. Because, again, our patients are, the average demographic, 62. You're not going to hand them a bag of weed and say, here, roll a joint. This is going to help you, right? So it's very restrictive, and it's in concentrate. So you have oil that you vape for inhalation. Inhalation, you have capillaries in your lungs. It traps the compounds delivered to your bloodstream instantly, okay? It's the fastest in, fastest out. You have a sublingual delivery, which is oil underneath the tongue. That's 20% under the tongue that's delivered fast, 80% is metabolized. You have a topical cream, which you can make your own, don't waste your money, and then you also have capsules, which are very strong. We're all used to popping pills. We're a pill-popping society. That's it. That's what's available. So it's not like there's a head shop that's going to distribute this medicine. The head shops, I agree with you, that would be, that would definitely tarnish the Bonita Springs, the city, or even the county and the community. But, that's not what this is. This isn't head shops. These are, these are legitimate people that are restrictive, and they have to, dispense this medicine under very, very, very strict laws. And I also want to go, kind of answer this other gentleman that just spoke. I'm self-funded. I am not a lobbyist. I own my business. I've drained all my bank accounts to actually keep this business running. And I'm on my 17th month, and I haven't cut myself a paycheck yet. And that's pretty tough to do, but it does get you out of bed every day. I do have a family that I provide for, but I became so passionate for these patients when I got involved in this, and I got involved in it by accident, by the way. The reason why I got involved is because these doctors were taking advantage of sick people, and I could not stand for that. So I hired my own doctors, and I built my own system. So, no one's capitalizing, no one's getting rich yet, although maybe some of the grow licenses are. But let's really kind of bring it home with compassion and empathy. We're kicking the can down the road, whether you guys want to admit it or not. And if you want to, fine, but I want to open the door with you. I have the analytical data. I have the software. I have an exclusive group of doctors, and I have a massive patient network with thousands of patients underneath my belt. I'm happy to open the door and work with each and every one of you to expose that data unidentified, or to talk with you about the way this system works. And I'm happy to give you my personal cell phone, and you can reach out to me anytime.
Thank you, sir. Other members of the public?
Just very quickly, being that Revive magazine is a media outlet, and our main priority and mission is to educate people. If the board here would like to talk to us at any given point to find out more information or how things are working in Colorado, I spent 3 years out there. There's 1,000 dispensaries in Metro Denver proper. I'm not exaggerating, 1,000. You know what? The rape rates don't go up, the arson rates don't go up, the murder rates don't go up. In fact, everything's gone down. There was a study back in the earlier 2000s where California had a number of dispensaries that closed down. And what happened? Crime went up. They thought it would go down. What we've learned is that when you have retail facilities available to the public, crime rates go down. When I was in Miami, I visited Curaleaf Dispensary, and I went to their neighbors and I said, what do you think about having a dispensary right next door to your place of business? They said, you know what? It's free surveillance cameras for us. We don't have to worry about getting robbed. We don't have to worry about anything. The dispensary has top-notch security. They've got cameras everywhere. we've never felt safer. And this is in downtown Miami, which, by the way, only has 2 dispensaries. So if you're looking at a place like Miami versus Bonita, and Miami only has 2, you can't expect to have 30 of them here. And I do want to mention, too, that there's a huge difference between a head shop and a dispensary. A dispensary is kind of like a Google store or an Apple store. You walk in, it's bright lights, and there's product in beautiful display cases. Most of it are virgin products even. You can't even get the real stuff until it's ordered. So seeing that it's not where you walk in and it smells of patchouli and incense going and tie-dye hanging from the ceiling and bongs, everywhere, it's not like that. We wish that CVS could carry it. That'd be fantastic. It'd make everybody's lives easier. We don't have that opportunity right now. But again, through continuing that education, what Shannon does, what we do, what all of these people up front, what Nick does, we're here to educate and to help. So if you have to come to any of us, by all means, give us a call. We're more than happy to provide you with any information, anecdotal or, empirical. We're here for you and to help.
Thank you very much. Other members of the public?
Council, Mayor, Jeff Field. Just wanted to extend the same offer that my consulting services are available to any member of the council for questions. I've worked in numerous states across the country in medical programs with doctors and researchers across a number of different medical qualifying conditions. I personally in this industry because I lost my mother, who was a Southwest Florida resident, to cancer, and with the quality of life, began to research this about 10 years ago and have seen now life-changing benefits from it. And when it comes to education, including peer-reviewed research papers that are documenting the benefits for medical cannabis. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none. Motion to adjourn? Motion. Second. We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.